Hi, welcome everyone. I'm going to go ahead and call the Regulatory Subcommittee of Regulated Industries to order. We have only one piece of legislation before us today. Let's see here. House Bill 880. We're going to be working off of LC 365735S. Representative Ballard, would you like to come forward and tell us about your bill? I know that we heard this previously in subcommittee. It was a hearing only, and you have made some changes. Thank you.
Yes, thank you for this, Madam Chairwoman, for this second hearing on this bill. I have worked very closely with Chairman Powell over the last week or so to make some good and beneficial changes to this, and so I think we can all be happy with it. This bill does three things. It ensures that Georgia is compliant with the new federal law regarding military spouse licensure, which is a new section of the Service Members Civil Relief Act signed in July of 2023. It meets the Department of Defense requirements regarding the timeliness of licensure, and most importantly, it allows military spouses to work as soon as they get to Georgia. Changes from the current code now. And in this bill, a military spouse can begin the process of gaining their license before they even move to Georgia, as soon as they have orders in their hand that tell them that they will be assigned to a Georgia military installation. The employer will verify the license, make sure they're in good standing, have no disciplinary actions. They can go ahead and start shopping for jobs. And if the spouse meets the requirements and is not issued their license by the boards within 20 working days, they can go ahead and keep that job. I think this is a good compromise. Chairman Powell made all of those suggestions, so he is wise. And I'm just going to go through just a brief PowerPoint so that we can all kind of be on the same page. State of defense in Georgia, we've got 10 bases in Georgia. And we rank 6th nationally in the number of personnel. And the estimated economic impact of our military bases is between $19 and $20 billion. So, I mean, that's a huge portion of our state. We need to take care of them. So we have over 126,000 paid personnel that are tied to the bases. 57,000 active duty service members, and then 25,000 spouses. Now, nationally, the unemployment rate for military spouses is 21%. So that's why it's so important that we allow these spouses to get to work. I have, some women I know who have master's degrees in a subject area and have some licenses, and they've given up and they're doing things, like taking in alterations because they just sort of gave up on the job search. On average, a defense installation's economic impact is 27% of the community's GDP. And since we in our military communities are so tied to our bases, I don't know that other people who live in perhaps metro areas or other areas of the state can imagine if, an outside agency came and took away 27% of your community's GDP. But that's kind of what we live with in military communities. We don't want to lose our missions. We don't want to lose our bases. 34% of spouses work in occupations requiring licenses, and this is the shocking statistic. Spouses routinely lose 6 to 9 months of income with their move. Now, a first-year enlisted service member with a spouse and a child makes just over $24,000 a year. Now, you make $24,000, you're counting on your spouse to maybe make another $24,000, but they are losing 9 months of income. And so that is definitely a hardship. And you can see here, 25% of our high demand occupations do require licenses. We're screaming for these workers, and we have workers that can be put in these career fields, and we just need to let them. And that's the end. But one other statistic, we have 87% of our military spouses are women. And so this is a bill that helps women. It helps young families get a good start, and it helps them, ease that transition into Georgia. And this is a good step. I know that we talk a lot about regulatory reform and licensing reform. We've heard this over and over again all session, and I think this is a good first step.
Thank you, Representative Ballard, for bringing the bill. We have a lot of members out today. I think they needed to attend another committee meeting. I did want to just ask you quickly, I know you mentioned earlier in subcommittee in our previous hearing that this is going to have a positive effect on our DoD rating.
Yes.
Can you expound on that a little bit?
So the Department of Defense ranks military communities in a variety of categories, schools, your school system, your healthcare system, and professional licensure for spouses. Currently, under our current code, where it's getting a license within 90 days, that gets us 0 points. So the Department of Defense does not award us any points in that category, and this bill will remedy that.
Great. Awesome. Thank you. I have no further questions. Do we have anybody? I think we do. We have some folks here that would like to speak to the bill. Thank you, Representative Ballard.
Thanks, ma'am.
Let's see here. First name, is it Daniel Rhodes? Are you here? Thank you. And if you'll just let us know who you represent.
Thank you so much, Madam Chair. Committee members, my name is Dan Rhodes. I am COO of the 21st Century Partnership in Warner Robins area. Just wanted to say a couple of words about this bill and support. Right off the bat, of course, this is absolutely in support of our military families. So the one thing that we need to always remember is as we transition to a military that is professional. So in other words, we're asking our people to volunteer to come here. Now, whenever we're moving our folks around, that is a federal order that they have to go to the different states. So, and they're moving every between 1 to 4 years. For the Air Force, our folks, usually it's about once every 2 years. And by the time they actually get to that state and get started, it's taking upwards of a year to get their license. So even in the current bill, it says 90 days, but that's not what we're seeing in the actual world. In practice, that's been taking a year to get those licenses in place. So at the end of that, now you've got a year left on orders, and that's not much time to actually get into the job and be able to advance yourself. So a lot of the wives are just giving up. As Bethany said, Representative Ballard said, they're just finding the other jobs, things that are easier for them to do. And I think we're decreasing the economic availability for those families in the future. It makes sure that a lot of the spouses, and oh, by the way, that's 94% women, are then unable to advance in their own careers. So they're giving up their careers for their spouse. Amazing that they're doing that. If we're able to pass this bill, at least we're demonstrating to those military spouses that we're supporting them, and that's a fantastic way for us to show that support. She brought up the strategic basing process. As that stands right now, that is primarily an Air Force process. That will be across all services, so all those services are going to be looking at least initially, licensure and educations. And as she said, we're going to get 0 points on strategic basing processes in the future. And that means that we certainly have the possibility of losing out on missions. Not something we want to do. And again, those families are moving once every 1 to 3 years. So trying to make sure that not only are the missions available in the state for them to come to, but then their spouses have that ability. She's already brought up the SCRA, so I won't talk on that one anymore. And finally, let me thank you guys, this whole body, for all the support that you've provided it with licensure in the past. You all have done wonderful in making sure that you're supporting it. You often don't get thanked for what you guys are doing, so thank you so much for the support that you've had. Pending any questions, that is...
Mm-hmm. And thank you for that. How does Georgia compare to other states, the ones that you would regard as more friendly
So we're really friendly, and don't take that wrong. We are a very friendly state.
Specifically as
We're
relates
doing-
to licensure.
On licensure, so Utah, Illinois, California, there are a list of states that are already doing this. There are states that are bringing it up in their own legislatures this year to pass. We're pretty good, but again, it's an end game sum. So we haven't passed it. We don't meet DOD requirements, and that in the end means that we're getting the zero. Even with, because I think the current law says 90 days, even with that, from experience, what we're seeing is in the field, the folks that are applying for the licenses aren't getting them. It's taking them upwards a year.
And that does speak to the larger problem with licensure.
Indeed.
In Georgia, yeah.
But the best way to approach this is by taking a small subset of our population, one that has no choice but to be in this state, and say, thank you for coming to this absolutely amazing state, and let's make sure that we're getting your license.
I agree, and that subset is an important subset.
Indeed.
It certainly is, and I don't really view this as that we're putting these folks ahead of the average Georgian. I mean, we do have different expectations of our military families than the average Georgian. You know,
Absolutely.
we are asking them to put their lives on the line for our freedom, and I do think that this is a positive step in the right direction.
Yes, ma'am.
I don't have any further questions, Mr. Rhodes. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Okay, we have Gabe Sterling. Are you here? You are. How are things at the Secretary of State's office?
It's the middle of the session. It's going great. I want to thank you, Madam Chairman, for allowing us to be here today, and I want to thank Representative Ballard for her bringing this bill. And you mentioned something up here that you took the wise counsel of Chairman Powell. I find that to be a wonderful thing to do when it comes to these licensing bills. I'm operating on the previous draft right now, but the changes you mentioned are absolutely very welcome by our office, because one of the things we were concerned about was there was no notification procedure originally. So it's hard for us to do the job that the Constitution mandates, which is health, safety, and financial protection. But since they're in the loop in the 20 days, haven't fully reviewed, I love that idea, because what we need to do is we need to move to a more administrative process overall so we can get everybody's licenses faster when we can. Thank you. I won't review it on the dais, but I'll look it over and get back to you if there's anything big. A couple of quick things. Administratively, we already allow spouses to apply, but once they get their orders, so we know there's a hook to get them into the state. Another thing that we do right now is we're building a new system called GOALS, the Georgia Online Application Licensing System. In the old system, EMLO, with the previous law that passed, essentially we got no money to implement it, so we had to put in a manual process. So right now, when a military spouse checks off that box on the paper application or on the EMLO, basically it gets downloaded, put into a shared drive, and every morning staff has to look first and work on those. In the new system, they check that box online, and it immediately gets routed to the analyst and goes to the top of the list. And if there's multiple military spouses that day in that license, they stack up on the time they come in. So that's already going to administratively address some of these things. But as was noted earlier, there are lots of drafts of bills to move licensing forward. We have been underfunded for a very long time. We bring in $24 million a year, we get $8.5 million to try to achieve all the things we're asked to do all the time for a population that has grown from, let's see, when we got here, there was about 430,000 licensees, now we're about 580,000. And the budget we had in 2017 under then Secretary Kemp was $8.5 million. The budget we have now is $8.5 million. And we've essentially, through the wisdom of the House and Senate appropriators, we took leftover bond money we had when we came in under budget on the voting system and used about $4 million of that to build the new system we're building now. And it's working pretty well so far, but like any new software, there's always hiccups and we're getting through them. But we welcome this bill. We want to work with the members of the committee to make sure it achieves what you want to achieve in a real way and still protects the health and safety of citizens. And I, like you, Chairman Earhart, these are the people we asked to put their lives on the line. And one of the other things is, in my early life in the 90s, I was on the Military Affairs Coordinating Committee for Georgia when we had to worry about the BRAC closures. And we were always worried about how we were measured on things like this. So we have to make sure that we're taking the steps proactively. And I think doing the subset absolutely is important. The Secretary believes it's important, and we'll work with you all to do that. I know we're trying to get a meeting with President Pro Tem's office and you and our side to make sure we're all on the same page. But we are supportive of this, of the changes in the bill that I've heard so far. We want to review it, and we'll get you back something in writing, but I'll stand for any questions you might have.
Thank you. And the new system that you reference, is that fully implemented at this time, or is it still rolling out?
What we're doing is we're doing 3 separate rollouts. We're in the first rollout right now, and I'm putting off the second rollout until we get everything cleaned up. There were some data migration issues, and one of our biggest problems is trying to do verifications individually, and people who got their license 10 years ago and they put in, Bob Smith, and they typed Robert Smith now, the system doesn't recognize them. They have to go through different variations of that, but we've changed how we're doing verification. We're sending pins out to individuals, plus the admonition of remember your old email that you did, and we now have a new SOP for those new graduates going in. Don't use your school email because it's not going to be there in a year. So little things that you don't think of off the top until you get into the real life side of it. But it's 3 rollouts. I was hoping to get done before the end of the fiscal year. Out of safety, I want to make sure it all works properly, because the last one we're going to roll out is nurses, which is our sort of cat, daddy, mo-d, biggest, most important one. And one of the most important things we can get is military spouses who are nurses, because we have a nursing shortage, especially near military bases. So it's vitally important we pass something like this to make that happen.
And the ultimate goal of this new system being really essentially expediency.
Expediency.
And efficiency in the processing of these applications.
And transparency for the applicants, because what we found is, in our reviews, is the average applicant has 6 touches with an analyst going back and forth about different things. And one of the issues with the 90-day licenses right now is they can start, but they'll have a deficiency, like they're missing the continuing education they're supposed to have, and that's what kind of extends these things out. But we've gotten some of those processes cleaned up, and we're trying to get those numbers down. But it's hard. We're rolling out a new system because the people who are helping to build it are the ones who have to do the work, who also have to do the licenses. And I've kind of told people, set your expectations. I've got people working overtime, not getting paid sometimes, because they want to get this done for the people of Georgia. I mean, I talked to my deputy director. We had a phone call at 1:30 in the morning last night with our implementer and Salesforce trying to get a particular item fixed that only affected 400 people, but we wanted to get it fixed. So that's the kind of focus we're bringing to it. But overall, that's the intention. What we need is an administrative ability, because there are times when boards can't get a quorum and they can't meet and they can't issue a license. The boards, from this office's opinion, should be focusing on complaints and compliance to protect the health and safety. A license ought to be a quick administrative thing. You got everything you're supposed to have? Yes, here's your license. That's what we're trying to get to eventually.
Okay, thank you for that.
Thank you all.
And I have no further questions for you. Thank you. Mrs. Ballard, do you have, Mrs. Ballard, Representative Ballard, do you have anything else you'd like to? Okay, all right. Well, thank you for the hard work done on this. I know that you you took the request of the chairman into consideration. I see the changes that you made. I think they're positive. I mentioned to you before when we had a hearing on this bill that, oftentimes there's a lot of perfection that goes on in subcommittee before it hits the full committee. And, my goal for you, because I do believe in this bill as well, is that with the changes that you've made, we set your bill in motion for the best chance of success in full committee. So I do thank you for all of your work on the bill and for those that came to testify today. I am going to exercise chairman's discretion here, which I'm told I can do, given that we don't have a quorum today and do not need one in subcommittee, and we're going to go ahead and advance this bill to full committee. So thank you so much, and if we have no other questions, thank you, and this meeting is adjourned.